Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Josh, and this is your stimulus check update for the next stimulus package for Tuesday, September 8th. I hope everyone is off to a good and safe start to their Tuesday so far, and that you all had a wonderful Labor Day weekend. In this video, I'll be discussing both the first and second stimulus check. I'll also be discussing unemployment, why we may be getting a second stimulus check very soon, and then I'll be wrapping up this video by answering some of the comments and questions that I received in my previous video. But first, if you wouldn't mind real quickly liking this video, give me a big thumbs up. It really just helps with the YouTube algorithm in terms of pushing this video out to other viewers like you, and hopefully helping other people like you as well. Okay, so I'm going to kick off today's video by once again going over a quick update on the federal unemployment insurance benefits. We now have a lot more new information since my last video, so let's go ahead and dive right into it. First up, you'll see the list of the states on the screen that have already started paying out the $300 federal plus up so far. In parentheses, you'll see the amount of weeks these states have paid out so far. That said, we can expect that these states should have around 5 weeks worth of paid out benefits. Next up, on the screen, you'll see the list of the states that have been accepted for the federal unemployment insurance benefits but haven't started paying them out yet. For most of these states, it shouldn't be too much longer before they start paying them out. Most of the states now have a pretty good estimate on when they'll be paying out, and I'll also be showing that date up on the screen as well for the states that do have an estimated payment date. If you don't see your state up on the screen, then that simply means the payment date is currently unknown at this point. I'm hoping that these states don't take all the way until October to begin paying out, as some states have been rumored to. And finally, up on the screen, you'll see the list of states that haven't even been accepted for the $300 federal plus up yet. For those of you who live in these states, I'm incredibly sorry. It should not be taking this long to apply and be accepted for the benefits. Now, you should still be receiving at least 3 weeks worth of payments regardless, but people need this money now, not a month from now. Also, just as another reminder, in order to receive the $300 federal plus up, you must be receiving at least $100 in state unemployment insurance benefits. Okay, moving right along to some updates in regards to the next relief package and the second stimulus check. So yesterday, instead of taking Labor Day off, Steven Mnuchin, Mark Meadows, Nancy Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer sat down and worked hours on end negotiating the next relief package. Oh, who am I kidding? Of course they took the day off. Our House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, probably spent her day at another local business, only open for the higher up government officials and not for us peasants. Steven Mnuchin, I'm sure, enjoyed a nice bike ride, and, well, as far as the others go, who really knows? It's not that they would probably end up cooperating at this point anyways. All kidding aside, the Senate will be returning to Washington today, where they hope to begin talks and perhaps even vote on a slimmed down $500 billion bill. This bill, of course, I must also mention, doesn't include a second round of stimulus payments in them, so it's not going to be the most popular. I won't go into too many details on what it all includes, because really it has no chance of actually passing. The main point of this bill is to at least get partisan support from other Republicans, which is something they've really been lacking over the past few months. Some Republicans have been calling for $1 trillion in spending for the next package, and then we have some of the more conservative Republicans who are saying, whoa, this spending is way out of control. We don't need to spend any more. So this $500 billion bill is more so to appease those more conservative Republicans who don't wish to spend another $1 or $2 trillion and go into even more debt. Oh, and if you ever just want a friendly reminder of what our current national debt is, you can always just go to usdebtclock.org. Spoiler alert, it's not pretty. Though this time of national crisis, with everything out of control, I would say most people would agree that stimulus was most definitely needed. Even the most conservative Republicans agreed that the CARES Act was necessary, for example. Now, since this slimmed down bill doesn't have much importance, since it doesn't have a chance of actually passing, the real focus is on the $300 billion that were found in an account that they never ended up using. Even though President Donald Trump didn't specify what the funding source was, it's being speculated it's from unused business loan money approved by lawmakers in the CARES Act. In the CARES Act, there were $500 billion appropriated to the Treasury, with $454 billion intended to cover losses on lending programs from the Federal Reserve. At this point, $259 billion still remains unused, which isn't a rounded off $300 billion, but it's pretty darn close. Now, just for reference, according to the Economic Policy Institute, the first $1,200 payments to U.S. families ended up being around $300 billion. This means that we should have just enough money to send out another round of $1,200 payments to American families. Now, they would need to go to the exact same people who received them in the first round, which means that the dependents over the age of 17 would be left out unless they lowered the amount they gave to each person. This is great news, and honestly, I can't possibly see a scenario where they wouldn't use these funds for stimulus checks. Now, even though these funds were originally designated for Federal Reserve lending programs, these checks should not be loans. I'm also guessing they shouldn't be taxable either, and once again, instead be an advanced refundable tax credit. The president has come out with very strong words in wanting to use this money towards a second round of stimulus payments, and even though he said he'd like to simply issue an executive order, he'd first like to have a one-line approval from Congress. President Trump said, quote, "It's money that we have, money that we built up, and money that we haven't spent, and I would love to give it to the American people as a very powerful stimulus." Trump then went on to say, "I think there is a theory that I could do it without having to go back, but I think it would be appropriate to go back, and I would ask Congress to approve it. It's a very simple approval. It's a one-sentence approval, and the Democrats should do that. The Republicans will do that. They would be glad to do that." So, being that both political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, support a second round of payments, I don't see any way Congress will block these payments from going through. Anyone who steps in and says, "No, President Trump, I don't want you to use this money to send more direct payments to American families," will be strongly looked down upon. Can you imagine blocking direct payments to Americans with elections coming up in less than 2 months? I just can't see that happening. No way. Now, of course, I'll never say never, and I still think that we should go into this with the mindset of preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. But let's just wait and see. If Congress does give the president the go-ahead, then they should be able to get these checks out in the next couple of weeks, which is very good news. After all the letdowns of thinking we may not receive another round of checks, it's looking like we may just receive them after all. Then, after that, it'll be right back to the drawing board of passing another relief package for extending the federal unemployment benefits, small business aid, among other things. And if they're able to use that money towards stimulus checks, that should make things a little bit easier on the two sides to come to agreements. That frees up around $300 billion in spending for the bill, so that should bring their spending to be a bit closer to what it needs to be. Let's just hope for the best here. I do firmly believe that there are some very good things to come. Okay, so at this point in time, I'm just going to give a quick update on the first round of stimulus payments because unfortunately there are still way too many people who haven't even received their first stimulus check yet. This is absolutely crazy because if they end up using the $300 billion they found towards a second round of stimulus checks, then some people may end up receiving 2 rounds of stimulus payments before some people even receive the first check. Now, I'm not sure if they'll end up just combining the 2 checks together and send out a $2,400 check to those who never received the first check, or if they'll end up sending 2 separate checks, but I'm hoping they'll find a way to speed things up this time around. After all, they already have everyone's information, so it shouldn't take too much longer for the second round of payments to go out. With that said, let me know in the comment section below if you received your first stimulus check or if you're still currently waiting for it. So, if you still haven't received your first stimulus check, the best advice I can give you at this point is just to continue checking the payment portal. That will be your #1 resource, and even though you can still most definitely call the IRS, most of the information they'll be able to give you is the same information you can find right through the payment portal. Now, if you would like to call the IRS regardless with questions about your first payment, you can always still do so by calling them at 1-800-919-9835, and the only recommendation that I would have for you is to try calling a little bit earlier in the day just to avoid those longer hold times. Now, one thing that I would also recommend if you haven't received your first stimulus payment is to check in with other family members to see if you were claimed as a dependent on one of their recent tax returns. I've been seeing a numerous amount of people comment that they actually found out one of their family members claimed them as a dependent on one of their recent tax returns, and that's why they never received their payment. So that could very well be the case for you as well. However, if you weren't claimed as a dependent, then you should still end up receiving your payment. The IRS is going to continue to send out more and more payments each and every week, so you will eventually receive your $1,200. Additionally, just as another reminder, if you're on Social Security benefits and never received the $500 for your dependents under the age of 17, then you'll have until September 30th to use the non-followers tool to claim them. Otherwise, unfortunately, you have to wait all the way until 2021 to claim a $500 credit on your tax return. I definitely don't want to see any of you have to wait any longer than what you have to. Alright, so at this point, I'm just going to answer some of the comments and questions that I received in my previous video. And if you have any other comments or questions for me, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I do try to answer as many of the comments and questions as I possibly can, but for those comments and questions I'm not able to respond to, I do try to pick some of the more popular ones to answer in the next video in video form. Okay, so without further ado, let me go ahead and jump into the first comment of today's video, which is from Johnny. Johnny says, will people who owe child support receive a stimulus check this time? Alright, thank you so much for your question, Johnny, and that completely depends on which bill they end up passing in the end. In the Democrats' plan, the HEROES Act, people with past due child support would not have their payments garnished. However, in one of the Republicans' plans, the HEALS Act, people with past due child support would have their payments garnished. So, with that said, it completely depends on which bill they end up passing in the end. Now, since the CARES Act was a bipartisan bill and stimulus payments were garnished for those with past due child support, my guess is that it won't change this time around, but with anything, we'll just have to wait and see. Okay, moving right along to the next question of today's video, which is from Luis. Luis says, Josh, do you think that the people on VA and Social Security benefits will receive a second stimulus check? Alright, thank you so much for your question, Luis. And yes, people on VA and Social Security benefits should be eligible for the next stimulus check. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin has already made mention that everyone who received the first stimulus payment will also be eligible for the second stimulus payment as well. And since those people on VA and Social Security benefits both received the first round of checks, then they should also be getting the second round as well. This is very good news, and we can only hope to get these checks out sooner rather than later. Alright, so on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. If you did enjoy the content in this video and you'd like to see more videos like it, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. It is completely free to do so, and it's a great support to me. Also, if you'd like to receive one free stock from Webull, valued all the way up to $1,600, please feel free to claim that free stock by clicking the link in the description box below. And until next time, I'll see you guys, and I hope you have a great day today.